Hey everybody, welcome back to Listography for Albums of the Year. Today we are listing our favorite albums of 1974. All right, so 1974. The last video that I did the intro for was 1971, and I talked about David Hepworth's book and his argument that 71 was the best year for music of all time. 74, a lot of people like to make the argument that 74 was the worst year for music of all time. This argument, as far as I can tell, is based pretty much upon the Billboard charts and the Hot 100 singles, a lot of really just vapid pop, really corny and sentimental songs all over the charts. The top two songs of the year were The Way We Were by Barbra Streisand and Seasons in the Sun by Terry Jacks. Although I don't think I necessarily completely agree with the assessment of it being the worst year ever. If the Billboard charts is your metric, then maybe, but just below the surface of the mainstream, there's a lot of really good music, tons of great sort of album-oriented rock happening. Really good years, 74 and 75, I think are really good years for hard rock, which maybe is why you don't see some of these albums in the mainstream as much and not really charting as well. You know, you've got the debut records from Kiss, Rush, Bon Scott debuts with AC/DC in 74. A bunch of great bands form in 74, sort of hinting at what's to come in the future. 38 Special, Blondie, Cheap Trick, The Fabulous Thunderbirds, Moxie, The Ramones, Squeeze, Spyro Gyra, The Stranglers, Lindsey Buckingham, and Stevie Nicks join Fleetwood Mac in 74. On the other side of the coin, some bands breaking up. The Stooges, King Crimson, and the Moody Blues all break up, and all three would eventually later reform. Mick Taylor leaves the Rolling Stones. And you've got Patti Smith recording her first single, Hey Joe, which some people consider the first ever punk single. Zeppelin announced their new record label, Swan Song. Harry Nilsson and John Lennon heckle Tommy Smothers at the Troubadour Club and then get into an altercation with a photographer outside. You've got the California Jam, bands playing for 200,000 people. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Deep Purple, the Eagles, and Black Sabbath are all there. Yeah, just a lot of stuff going on. Records are doing big business. Everyone's selling a ton of albums and playing big arenas and stadiums, and there's no shortage of great records to choose from. So, Kramzer, you want to get us started? Tell us what you got.
Sure. Yeah, 74 so far has been the weakest year for me in the 70s, and looking ahead, it might be the weakest year in the 70s. You're missing a lot of the heavy classic hitters, either putting out stuff that's not close to their best or not putting out stuff at all. But what I've got is pretty competitive. I'm going to throw out as just missing my top five is going to be probably my favorite Queen album, Sheer Heart Attack. But my runners-up are going to be New Skin for the Old Ceremony by Leonard Cohen, Late for the Sky, Jackson Browne, Not Fragile by Bachman Turner Overdrive.
Wow.
Which I thought might win the whole year. And then I've got Country Life by Roxy Music, but my favorite album of 1974 is On the Beach by Neil Young.
In their dealings with addressed envelope to Davis and Kirk.
I don't think this is my favorite Neil Young album, but given the competition this year, I think it's an easy choice for me. He's one of my favorite artists, and I finally get him a win right now. I really dig this album. It's very bare bones, pure and genuine, has all the classic Neil Young stuff that you want, really good restrained lead work. He never dazzles you or goes crazy with his leads or solo, but he's got such like a nice voice to his guitar playing. The album's really despondent and existential. It's thinner and less acoustic than his previous stuff, which I think was, more close to Buffalo Springfield. And then when he went on his own, he kept a little bit of that, especially guitar sound, but now it's a lot different. And all the songs are kind of like these deconstructed blues songs, which I really like. It's a little bit grungy as well, and it's got like this really nice late night country feel scattered throughout with really nice relaxing slide guitar and soft organs. But then you've got, similar to like Ohio and like that murdering, feverish political stuff with like Revolution Blues. Really cool. Whole album's kind of just about him being conscious of like the mess of the world. I think this is right around the time where he starts to get environmentally conscious, and some of his stuff is just like a critique from the outside looking in, and then some of his stuff on this album is him right in the thick of it and kind of experiencing it. Not really, probably the weakest track on it for me is For the Turnstiles, but it's still pretty damn good. I love See the Sky About to Rain. I love On the Beach, Vampire Blues, Revolution Blues, Ambulance Blues at the very end, like a big 8-minute or 9-minute epic. Really great way to close it out. Yeah. 1974, Neil Young, On the Beach.
Well, for me, 1974 it is a kind of a weird year because it's like all of my favorite artists, other than like Zeppelin and Who, are putting out albums. And they're all kind of like in my mind at least, underrated kind of albums. And I had 6 that I just could not figure out the order. So somebody's going to get left out. Unfortunately, like Kramzer, it is Sheer Heart Attack by Queen. Great album, but just narrowly misses the list because there's 5 other that are slightly better. At number 5, I'm going to go Caribou by Elton John. I think his most underrated album. He doesn't even like it, but I love it. I think it's phenomenal. The Bitch Is Back is just one of the great kind of just, I don't even know. The fact that Bernie Taupin would write that, it just kind of fits him so well. It's a little scary. But the rest of the album's great too. Got some kind of like Southern American country rock in there. A lot of different styles. A really strong album. Number 4, I'm going to go with Pretzel Logic by Steely Dan. Maybe their best. The critics usually call this maybe their best, that or Asia. And it's another, Steely Dan's been on my list every year they've come out. I think every one of their albums will be on my list. There always seems to be the runner-up, however, unfortunately. But another really strong effort from the Dan. Number 3, I got to go with Stevie Wonder's Fulfilling This' first finale. Tough to say. His, most personal album, not quite as big as the other ones he'd released in the same period, but just a phenomenal personal album. Again, it's weird. It's like 74 had all like the albums that the critics didn't consider the best because you have a lot of bands kind of in their classic period, but I love Fulfilling This' first finale. Any other year basically would be number 1, but I go on. Number 2, the best posthumous album of all time, probably Grievous Angel by Graham Parsons. Just, another great album from him. He only released like 4 in his whole life with 3 different bands. But every time he managed to get off the drugs enough to make an album, it was great. But my number 1, literally the opposite of Kramzer's pick of On the Beach. I got to go with Queen 2.
In their dealings with addressed envelope to Davis and Kirk.
I don't know if this is my favorite Queen album. It might be because it's so different. It is, it's so kind of embroiled in the fantasy world. And it's so completely different from something like Zeppelin 4 with kind of how they dip into Tolkien a little bit. Zeppelin's rootsy and folky. And Queen is just like, give me like 12 guitar, tracks all at once. I'm going to pretend like I'm an organ or something, or a synthesizer. And it just sounds kind of so big and so grandiose. It's not like anything else probably in the history of rock and roll music. The first side White, as they called it, was mostly Brian May, and it's good. Father to Son is great. White Queen. But I think it's the second half that really gets it for me. The side Black, all Freddie Mercury, just kind of insane ogre battle, Fairyfeller's Masterstroke. It's almost impossible. I don't think they play these live that much because they're so kind of studio works, but it's just kind of the layers of guitar and vocals and incredible backup vocals, great bass playing, great drumming, great guitars. And it's just, it's not like anything you've ever heard before. Marching with the Black Queen's my favorite Queen song, just all over the place. You can't pin it down, but I love it. And it's just one of those albums that, and it has no comparable, even in Queen's discography. It just doesn't sound like anything else. And it really kind of gets me as a fan of the grandiose and overproduced and just, insane kind of music that Queen was capable of producing. So Queen 2 is my favorite for 1974.
All right, well, that's pretty interesting. I had Queen 1 on my list in 73. Queen 2 and Sheer Heart Attack are much weaker albums to me. I don't know. I love Queen 1, but I don't really get back on the Queen train until Night at the Opera and day at the races. But 74, man, I had a tough time getting this year down to 5 records. Some personal favorites that came out this year. You got the first 2 Coverdale era Deep Purple records and Burn and Stormbringer. You've got Bridge of Sighs by Robin Trower. You got Todd by Todd Rundgren, the First Kiss record. Here Come the Warm Jets by Brian Eno. All of these are missing my list. For my 5, I've got Pussycats by Harry Nilsson, produced by John Lennon. This was recorded during John Lennon's infamous Lost Weekend, which was actually 18 months in which he was separated from Yoko Ono. And he was living with his personal assistant, and I think at times he may have been staying with Harry Nilsson and Keith Moon. Just a lot of drunken debauchery happening, and they recorded this together. It's kind of a ramshackle record, but it's really good. They were egging each other on a lot during the recording of it, and in the process, Harry Nilsson damaged his voice, which would sort of plague the rest of his career. But it's a really cool record, worth checking out if you don't know it. I also have Crime of the Century by Supertramp. Just a really good sort of pop prog record. I think it's excellent. I think it's their best record. I've also got El Dorado by the Electric Light Orchestra. Just another fantastic kind of pop prog, I guess you'd call it. And then for the final 2 spots, kind of came down to the wire. I wasn't sure which to go with for the winner. They're kind of polar opposites. But for the runner-up, I'm going with The Hoople by Mott the Hoople. I think of Mott the Hoople as kind of a blue-collar glam band. Mick Ralph's very much sort of a meat and potatoes kind of guitar player. But this is their glammiest glam record. Ariel Bender comes in and replaces Mick Ralph's, and he's a much flashier guitarist and kind of puts them over the top. It's a great record. Unfortunately, that means they will not take home any of my first place album of the years because this is their final record. But there's a lot of good Ian Hunter solo stuff ahead that has a shot. And then for my winner, Cram had it in his top 5, going with Late for the Sky by Jackson Browne.
In their dealings with addressed envelope to Davis and Kirk.
This is sort of like the pinnacle of that early 70s singer-songwriter kind of LA scene. Kind of goes downhill from here a little bit. There's still some good stuff on the horizon, but this is really kind of the zenith of that sort of movement. Fountain of Sorrow, one of my all-time favorite songs. I think it's sort of the perfect marriage of lyrics and music. There's just great harmonies, great musicianship, and just top-notch songwriting the whole way through it. I think it's one of the best of that sort of era. So nice picks all around, I think, for 74. I didn't see some of those coming, especially not Fragile.
It almost won. I think it's just like this awesome blue-collar truckin' rock album. And I really wanted to put Joni Mitchell had really good albums this year, Court and Spark, and Brian Eno had 2 good albums this year. But I think I've always respected and appreciated Brian Eno more than I've really enjoyed listening straight through to his albums. So it wasn't going to get in the top 5, but not the worst year in music ever.
No, but maybe we've been talking a little bit about the best 5-year stretch in history, and I've been saying it's 70 through 74, but it sounds like maybe you would go 69 through 73.
Yes, I probably would.
You're missing out on 75, my friend.
Yeah, 75. I mean, 73 and 75, probably all of my runners-up from 73 or 75 would probably be On the Beach by Neil Young. No disrespect to that album. I love it. But yeah, this was just, it was competitive, but it just, it's kind of like an A- year instead of A+ years all around it. So. All
right. Well, it sounds like in your mind, 75 is an A+ year. So we'll be getting to that soon. Guys, remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell, comment below with your picks, and we will see you in 1975.